Welcome to episode 56 of Norse Myths, Legends, and Folktales. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we learn about how King Gorm loves obtaining knowledge and decides to send Thorkill and others on a journey to speak with the giant Geirrod in part 1 of the Land of Not Dead and Many Marvels. There was a king in Denmark whose name was Gorm, and he had more desire to obtain knowledge than to win great glory in battle. He had royal courage, which he sought to prove in searching out the profound mysteries of the dread unknown, rather than by engaging in bloody conflict with his fellow men. Now Gorm came to hear of a lone, undiscovered land in the distant north, where vast treasure was concealed in caves. The giant Geirrod dwelt there, and although the way to his abode was full of perils for mortals, Gorm was consumed with desire to explore it. Many travelers who had ventured forth to discover the giant's country never again returned. They had to pay the dues of death. To reach the abode of Geirrod's ships must needs cross the vast tempestuous ocean that encircles the earth, and voyage on through horrors undreamt of, until the sunway has passed and the stars vanish from sight. For in that dread land there is no light, nor warmth of summer. Winter endures without end, and there is ever eternal darkness, unbroken and deep. But Gorm was without fear. No peril daunted him, nor could fear of suffering hold him back. He sought not wealth, although treasure abounded in the land of night. He desired rather the glory of achievement in searching out marvels unbeholden by living men. So it came that the king made known his purpose to the people, and 300 of his choicest war men clamored to share his renown. There was among them one braver than the rest, and it was he who had brought intelligence to Gorm of the dark, undiscovered land. His name was Thorkill. He had coasted the perilous shores and knew well the path of ocean thither, so he was chosen to be the leader of the exploring band. Thorkill counseled that there should be built 3 strong and commodious ships, covered with thick ox hides to afford shelter from tempest spray, for vast food stores must needs be taken in them. As Thorkill advised, so did Gorm of Denmark do. He had the vessels built. They were covered with skins and well laden with provisions and arms. In due season the voyage was begun. Northward sailed the billow-cleaving galleys, wind-driven through the seething foam, and each there were 100 chosen men. Ere long they came to Hålogaland, and they had favored progress on pleasant waters. But then the waves grew fierce, and the winds opposed them, so that the galleys were tossed and stayed on perilous seas, driven hither and thither, and turned divers ways from their proper course. So they suffered delay, and their voyage was prolonged. Under their food stores were all but consumed, and hunger menaced them with death. In dire straits, they made meager pottage and fed sparingly thus on scanty fare for many days. But at length their sufferings had end. One night, in thick darkness, they heard, booming hard on the wind, the breaking surf of shoreland billows. To the masthead at dawn a youth climbed nimbly, and in the distance he saw, hazed by spray, the high beetling cliffs of a rocky isle. Towards it were the galleys steered, and with glad eyes and wasted men gazed upon the welcoming land, rough and desolate as it was. Against wind and tide they made their way, until at length they reached a haven of refuge. Then they went ashore, scrambling over broken rocks, and climbed by slippery paths and the stern precipitous heights of the islands until they reached the level ground. On a green place nigh to a deep forest they beheld a great herd of browsing cattle. They were easy prey, for they feared not men, whom they had never before beheld. Indeed, the beasts assembled together to gaze with wonder on the sea-roving band. Thorkill had knowledge of the island perils, and he counseled the men to slay not more of the cattle than were needful for a single repast, lest the giants who kept watch there might be angered and should seek to prevent their departure. But the men heeded him not. So great was their greed that they slew many cattle and filled the galleys with their flesh. Heavily they feasted and were made glad, but there were those of them who paid dearly for their rashness. When night fell black, there were threats of dire vengeance. The forest resounded with loud bellowing, and from the rocky beach dread monsters dashed through the surf and beset the galleys. One, greater and fiercer than the others, strode knee-deep in the sea, swinging angrily a tree-like club. He raided the seafarers because they had slaughtered the cattle and demanded to be given a man from each galley because of the loss which the island had suffered. There was no choice but to accept the monster's terms. The few must oft be sacrificed so that the many may escape. So Thorkill cast lots, and 3 men were chosen and delivered unto the monsters who guarded the island herds. Thereafter, a favorable wind sprang up, the sails were set, and the ships drave onwards. Swiftly they voyaged and far. The days grew shorter and dimmer, until at length the sun was left behind, and the stars vanished. So, traversing seas unknown, they came nigh to outer Bargamaland. It was a dreary land, ice cold and dark. The snow never melts there, and eternal night prevails. Blacker than all else, the men saw dimly deep pathless forests through which ever roam strange, ferocious beasts unseen elsewhere. Many rivers were foaming seaward over sharp and treacherous reefs. Thorkill at last found the haven he sought, and the ships were drawn high on the beach. Then were the tents pitched. "From here," said Thorkill, "the journey to Geirrod's dwelling is short. Now unto all I give timely warning. Let no man open his mouth unto any monster that comes nigh, lest words should be spoken which would give them power to injure you. None save one who knows the customs of this land can converse safely with its strange people." Soon thereafter, towards the seafarers, a giant who called each seafarer by his name and spoke freely. The men were stricken with terror and answered him not. Thorkill told them that the giant was Geirrod's brother and was named Gudmund. He was a guardian of that weird land and protected from peril all men who sojourned there. Gudmund spoke unto Thorkill and asked him why the men answered him not, and the wily seafarer answered that they had little knowledge of his language and were ashamed to speak it. Then the giant bade them all to a feast and led the way along the banks of a river. Soon the travelers came to a golden bridge, and they desired to cross it. So fair did it seem, but Gudmund warned them that the river which they gazed upon divided the land of mortals from the land of horrid sights, and that the opposite bank was by sacred decree declared unlawful for mortals to tread. So they went onward by the road that they had taken, until they came to the dwelling place of Gudmund. Privily did Thorkill then speak unto his companions, and warned them to eat naught of the food placed before them, or drink of the liquor, or touch any man who was there. As he commanded them, so did they do, and at the feast they partook of their own viands only. The feasting hall was ablaze with splendor. With Gudmund were his 12 stately sons and 12 beauteous daughters, and they made merry. But when the host perceived that King Gorm partook not of the food or the wine placed before him, and that the others likewise refused the fare, he spoke to Thorkill, protesting that his hospitality was despised. But that wily seafarer said that his companions had long been unaccustomed to such rich fare, and feared to eat the dainties lest they should be sickened. Gudmund was ill pleased, because the food was prepared with spells, so that the guests might be made forgetful of the past, and compelled to remain for ever ill, the dismal shade among creatures non-human and weird. So the giant sought to tempt them further. To the king he offered his daughter for wife, and unto the others he would fain give brides also. But Thorkill prevailed upon them to make refusal. All save 4 of the men obeyed him, and these were made insane. Then Gudmund invited the king to visit his garden, so that he might partake of its wondrous fruits. But Gorm was warned by Thorkill, and refused to be lured thither. So the host perceived that he was baffled, and consented to guide them to the dwelling of Geirrod. He then conducted the travelers over the river, and promised to await their return. They entered a dismal land, which was fraught with peril and full of terrors. Not long did Thorkill and his companions travel, when they beheld a strange city, which seemed to be composed of vapor. Dismal and gloomy it was, and covered with dust and slime, as if it were neglected and deserted. Yet was it thickly peopled by sorrowing folk. The not dead inhabited it amidst horrors and illusions. Lofty were the battlements that surrounded the city, and surmounting them on stakes were the heads of fallen warmen. The gates were situated so high that they could not be reached save by ladders, and fierce hellhounds kept watch before them. Thorkill went first, and climbed towards the entrance, which is ever open. To the hounds he flung a horn smeared with fat, and they licked it greedily and were appeased. Then his companions followed him, and together they entered the gloomy city of the not dead. Horrible were the shades that hastened past them with the faces fixed aghast, and ever screaming woefully. They came and went, beholding naught. The streets were misty and loathsome. Putrid scum and miry filth stifled the air till the dead wind stank. Every sense was offended, every man was repulsed. The reeking foulness and the nameless horrors froze Gorm and his followers with agonized loathing. Then they came to Geirrod's mountain lair. The door opened on the ledge of a black precipice, but they faltered with icy dread before it. They shrank back, lest they might be overcome. But Thorkill spake words of encouragement, and bade them fear not. But he warned them not to touch aught which might tempt them, gems or gold or any treasure, nor to be terrified but what was horrible and weird. If a hand were laid upon anything within, he told them it would never be withdrawn, it would be bound, it would be knotted up. Then he bade them all to enter the companies of 4, Broder and Bushi, the skilful archers. With Thorkill and the king went first, the others followed in order. The doorposts were black with soot, which was centuries old and very deep. Filth lay everywhere. Gaunt monster sentinels were on guard. They were numerous, noisy, restless, and menacing. Some leapt about with maniac-like frenzy, playing a strange, repulsive game. No man spoke. Half stunned by belching filth reek from within, they entered falteringly. The dwelling was well nigh a ruin. The walls were dark and loathsome in the faint twilight. Horrors loomed through the shadows. A roof of airy strings was above them, and the floors were made of venomous snakes, steeped in foulness. Thorkill's companions were quaking with terror, and they could scarcely endure the violent and suffocating fumes. Yet they could not forbear gazing about them, confused with horror and mute with alarm. Vast giants were stretched as if dead upon benches of iron. In silent agony they lay as if carved from stone. Others wallowed in torture. Thorkill led the strangers through a rocky fissure, and they beheld, sitting on a high ledge, the old giant Geirrod. His body was transfixed to the cliff by a javelin. 3 giant maids with broken spines lay squirming beside him. These were the monsters whom Thor had thus punished because they had sought to overcome him with treachery. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales, many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.